There you go.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. Yeah, thanks for the really warm and generous introduction. It's nice to see so many assertives here today, some familiar faces and some new folks. So that's always great. So like Julie said, I was motivated to kind of also acknowledge help and support that I've gotten from Luke and Matt over the years in my teaching, and to think about how that might be a model for other people in terms of how to share the teaching materials. So I think the problem for me that this panel wants to confront is that, you know, we all are overworked. We all have a tremendous amount of teaching labor, and there's often tremendous overlap in what we do in the classroom within our fields, but also across disciplines, even across interdisciplinary and institutional borders. The problem is, as is often the problem in kind of the web-centric era that we live in, it's not having enough materials. It's being able to kind of filter and search and find and adapt in a time-efficient way, so that we end up saving time rather than, you know, disappearing down rabbit holes. And so I think all three of us have thought about this problem, individually for our own individual classes, but also kind of more on the level of the program, the Center for Teaching and Learning, and even kind of the discipline, right? And so we'll be talking about this at different scales, I think, along the way. Before doing so, I want to introduce our two guests. Really, really happy and excited to have both of them come visit us at Hunter. First, I'll introduce Matt. Matt Gold is Associate Professor of English and Digital Humanities at the Graduate Center, where he also directs the MS in Data Analysis and Visualization, as well as the MA in Digital Humanities. In his other abundant time, he directs the CUNY Academic Commons, and I'm leaving an awful lot of meat on the bone in terms of all the things that he does. The one thing he does not do, as far as I can tell, is sleep or eat. Luke Waltzer is the director of our counterpart at the Graduate Center, the adorably named TLC, Teaching and Learning Center. He is also director of community projects at the CUNY Academic Commons. He is a historian and an active scholar of teaching and learning. He also teaches, like Matt and myself, in the MA and DH program. In addition, he teaches in the Interactive Technology and Pedagogy certificate program. I'm leaving out an awful lot, but we don't really stand on the super long, grandiose intros here. So great to have both of you guys, who I consider as really valuable colleagues and friends. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to try to be kind of quick, and I'm just going to share two examples of this practice that we want to talk about, of sharing teaching materials and pedagogical ideas. One is a little bit bigger, there's sort of an effort that's rooted in the English department at Hunter College across the department. One is very small, just one course that I got some help with in what I hope is kind of a suggestive way. So first of all, in 2018, a new position was created in our department that I staffed called the Director of Undergraduate Studies. And so this position was created, also only funded for 2 years. It's kind of sunsetted, and we're trying to reboot it now. But it was created to address the problem of a wide range of multi-section courses that my pretty large department runs every single semester, with 3 or 4 or 6 or 7 sections, often staffed disproportionately by graduate teaching fellows from the Graduate Center, by part-time faculty, who very often were teaching this material for the first time with extremely skinny budgets of time and money and travel and all that. So how do we support these people? How do we do some quality control? How do we just make their lives easier without having to plow a whole lot of money and compensation and whatnot? How do we kind of take what we already have and make it more available? So we already had syllabi available, and going back 15 years when I first started at Hunter, there was this big ratty 3-ring binder that you would be given. The first time you teach a new course, you page through it and find some syllabi and put your own together. Now we basically just have a 3-ring binder that happens to be electronic files in a folder, but it's just a bunch of syllabi in Microsoft Word, and you can cut and paste and whatever. But how you sort of contextualize them and find them and know which ones are good and know which one belongs to which faculty member is difficult. So I wanted to, make the syllabi more available and more discoverable, but why stop there in my mind? I wanted to think about creating a hub that would appeal to faculty, kind of like magnetize them to come to it as a place, a kind of an oasis to find syllabi, potentially lesson plans, slide decks, assignment structure, all kinds of things. And also would be a place that you could give as well as take, right? So you would be encouraged to share your teaching materials. With that dream in mind, a little bit abstract, I went to the great Luke Waltzer and just said, how do I do this, right? I don't really want to put it on Blackboard because I want anyone to be able to bump into it and come across it. I want it to look nice, and I want it to be really flexible and customizable. And so he helped me figure out how to create a commons environment that would serve all of these needs. And so he wisely helped me create one single site, a simple WordPress site, and then use a structure of categories to try to kind of collate all the resources into the different courses that I wanted to serve. And I think there's 6 or 7 of them. I'll share that site with you at the end of my talk to avoid the bumping back and forth between the screen share. But I think you'll see there's a pretty nice looking site, pretty easy to navigate, and serves all those different constituencies, but also allows me to kind of broadcast to all the faculty teaching all these courses at once for matters of, writing assignments or things that have general application. Luke also encouraged me, and I think he's absolutely right, to create some private groups targeted to each of the sections where there could be little archives of readings in PDF that don't need to be out there on the open web because of fair use. Other sort of, there could be listservs where faculty could discuss within their cohorts of particular classes, particular issues to those groups. So I think, the Commons is wonderful. You've heard me shill for it before many times. And it really, because it's so customizable, it allows us to do so many things in such a kind of time efficient way. I think maybe that's about it for that. I'm happy to geek out about the process and the product we ended up with and how I got there and what worked and what didn't work in the Q&A. But I want to talk about something a little more smaller scale and maybe a little more immediately useful to all of us, since almost everyone here teaches courses at one time or another. And so I was assigned to teach a new class in digital humanities. And it was an intro class. I had never taught it before. It seemed a little bit intimidating. So I went to my good friend and colleague, Matt Gold, the none other than, who's taught the course many times, and said, Matt, what do you have for me? Help me out to figure out this class. And so Matt said, oh, well, you can fork my syllabus from GitHub. And I said, what? What are you talking about? I'm playing it a little naive. I did know what GitHub is. And I didn't even know what forking is. It sounds so subversive and naughty, but it's really not. Much more pedestrian. So I forked. I forked Matt's resource, which means that I grabbed his syllabus from GitHub. GitHub is, as you may know, an environment that is most often associated with sharing computer code and building coded objects together. Matt is using it, as many DHers do, also as a platform to share writing. And although it wasn't exactly designed with that in mind, it lends itself to that beautifully, in the sense that I was able to take his resource, import it into my environment, and then do things with it, work on it in such a way that it is still tied to Matt's syllabus and all the previous syllabi that Matt had created, going back into history. Matt could bump forward and look at my syllabus and see what I did with it, and perhaps even kind of fork that back into his own repository and make it work for him. So it creates a really dynamic environment in which faculty can share resources in a very seamless way. Sure, you can do this using Dropbox or Google Docs or whatever, but it's not really baked into the design quite as seamlessly and as neatly as GitHub. The other thing I'll mention, and this is super geeky, and not everyone will want to follow me across this bridge, but it works with Markdown, which is a sort of minimal text-based way of writing that harmonizes with, or kind of synthesizes with, many different environments. So when you create a syllabus on GitHub, as I did, you can serve it directly to your WordPress site, which parses the Markdown, and then it just appears beautifully. So I know I'm sounding a little bit jargony to some, but the nice thing about it is you can kind of use it as a back-end place where you can tweak your syllabus and it automatically updates on your website without having to actually edit that document in the WordPress environment, make changes. And even in this semester, I'm teaching one course that serves 2 different sites. And so you edit the document once and it goes both places automatically. Trust me, it saves a lot of work once you kind of figure out how to play with it. Again, I'm happy to kind of geek out on that and explain how that works and what it offers. But it has various advantages that may not be immediately apparent, but have been pretty useful for me. I think that's it. Very, very enthusiastic to hear your questions, but I'm going to turn the floor over. Luke, I think I'll just let you go first, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff and Julie, and thanks for the invitation. It's good to see you all on this weirdly humid but cold October day. This has been a great opportunity thinking about meeting with you all just to theorize the approach that we take to sharing teaching and learning materials here at the Teaching and Learning Center at the Graduate Center, and what the kind of intent and utility is behind that process. Again, so my job here is to run a Teaching and Learning Center supporting Graduate Center students who are becoming and growing as college teachers, and doing so within the chaotic environs of CUNY that you all know well, but they may be relatively new to. So all of those factors kind of inform how we want to bring these materials and those students together. I'll talk a bit more about that when we get into specific models. I also want to kind of acknowledge my positioning as a teaching center director who's just committed more generally to intensifying the circulation of teaching materials as a way to facilitate reflection and conversation around pedagogy, both because it creates opportunities to build community around our teaching and learning. My theory is that the more conversations about teaching that are happening within an institution, the stronger the experience for students will be as a result of that, right? So I'm deeply committed to figuring out ways to circulate teaching and learning materials in a variety of contexts and with a variety of intent. Those questions of audience, intent, and context always inform ultimately how these materials are presented, right? And ultimately they filter their way into the design of the interface, right? So for folks who are thinking about launching projects to share materials within a faculty or within a department or within a school or a college, right? Hopefully, the points I make and that Jeff and Matt have made or will make will help you kind of cue into the user experience of engaging with a teaching resource site, right? Just want to acknowledge that it's a complex task, right? Because teaching and learning materials, to be effective, they need to be situated and contextualized, right? And the process here is to take materials out of one context and to put them into another context, right? And that there's some labor that needs to accompany that process, right? There's decontextualization, evaluation, and then recontextualization. And that can happen at any kind of step in the process. That can be done by the person who's sharing the materials. That can be done by the person who's transmitting the materials. That can be done by the person who's adopting the materials. And in reality, it's often done by all 3 of those positions within the sharing process, right? But it has to be done in order for the materials to land effectively. And then the other is the kind of intention of the sharing process, right? Sometimes it's merely to help or to inspire others by providing models upon which they can build. Like I need a writing prompt for an in-class exercise, right? Or I need some ideas for how to do group work. Let me look at some models that I can then build upon, right? But those are not the only reasons for these efforts, right? Some programs may promote sharing as part of an effort to unify or to flatten the curriculum, right? Jeff's the model that he shared was a way to kind of organize conversation around the curriculum in a particular set of courses, right? Some programs may have signature assignments that they need to support for an assessment or accreditation process. So there could be sharing that accompanies that. Some may be sharing particular pedagogical approaches that are designed to address the needs of specific communities of students, right? And that are kind of grow out of the pedagogies of plays, right? Others may promote materials as a process of building or reflecting community, right? So each of these kinds of questions of intent ultimately shape how you organize the materials, how you collect them, how you disseminate them, how do you update them, and how you maintain them, right? It can be as simple as passing via email to your colleagues a sample assignment or a sample syllabus, or it can be as complex as a repository that evolves over time and has to have a relatively ornate taxonomy to keep track of everything that's posted to it and to make it legible to visitors, right? So all of these are possible. The Commons can facilitate all of them. And let me just share a few models that will kind of take this out of the abstract into the specific. And the first is actually not on the Commons. It was done on blogs at Baruch. And this is a site. Can everyone see my screen? Put together by my colleague, Lori Herson, who used to be at Baruch, as I did, and is now at the Graduate Center and the Teaching and Learning Center. And this is a project that pulls together strategies to support active learning, right? And I'll share all the links in the chat after I'm done so that you can dig in. But you can see there's multiple pathways into the activities. You can look at all activities at once, right? You can look at activities just on active note-taking. You can look at activities on group work, a low-stakes writing, or peer-to-peer instruction, right? You also see there's another column here, and each of these columns are the categories that Jeff mentioned earlier, which within WordPress become ways to enact a taxonomy or to organize your materials. You'll see that they've built out discipline-specific activities in calculus, Chinese literature, CIS, graphic design, library science, and marketing, right? So I'm looking at that and I'm seeing, okay, well, this is a site that was used to draw groups of faculty into a professional development process, right? So this is a site that launched with some activities, right? And then became a tool for organizing faculty in discussion around their teaching and some additional sharing, right? Then there's a resources tab that offers a justification for active learning. And that ultimately also links out to an entirely different site that was built by the math department or built with the math department, which is just focused on intermediate algebra and ways to do active learning there, right? And you see that this is maybe more granular in the kind of guidance that it offers. It gives plans by specific topics within this course, gives plans by unit, right? Which presumes a common curriculum, right? And then it also allows you to view activities by topic and unit, all collected. Okay, well, it looks like those are dead, right? So you can see here within one project, an active learning repository, you can see pathways through that different groups of faculty members took, okay? This is a new site that is put together by a graduate student at Johns Hopkins that's just been circulating in the Center for Teaching and Learning blogosphere over the past few weeks. And this is part of an effort to launch and organize a variety of teaching tools into a usable interface. Actually show you the main site. So ultimately, it's a lesson planning tool, and the first part of it is an active learning repository. And what this allows you to do is to sort through a set of different filters, right? So I want something that's easy, medium, or complex, right? So the kinds of assignments that I'll get modeled for me here kind of flow into those levels of complexity. How much time, prep time, will be required? Less than 5 minutes, 5 to 30 minutes, more than 30 minutes. Where on Bloom's taxonomy does this exercise fit? Okay. What kind of active learning? Individual engagement, small group engagement, large group engagement, discussion-based, right? What elements of inclusive learning are included in the model assignment, right? And then you see feedback, whole person learning, the amount of time, class size, class modality, right? So this is really built out as a repository with a pretty complex taxonomy that's intended to build over time. And it's explicitly built as a reflection of what the author of the site, whose name I'm blanking on now, argues are evidence-based activities, right? Evidence-based teaching and learning activities, right? That's how you can see Bloom's taxonomy is very strongly represented within this filtering system, right? So there, some people actually may reject Bloom taxonomy as a model. They're presenting it as an organizing principle here. Okay. Let me show you another model. This is a workshop archive that we've built at the Teaching and Learning Center, which offers plans for over 100 workshops that we've done at the TLC since 2016 or so. And you'll see that the taxonomy works in a couple of different ways. You can see all workshops with a single click, and you can see workshops focused on specific areas here. Okay, and then we have them listed as direct clicks via text here, and then workshops organized by semester. So you can kind of look at the collection of workshops and see what we've been working on in any particular moment. That the timeline gives you that, right? So if I am to now click into one of these, you'll see that at the top of the resource is a description of what the workshop is. And this is usually part of the outreach that we send out to invite people to register for the workshop. The goals for the workshop, right? And then the activities that folks do within the workshop. They do a reading assignment at the outset. There's a couple of discussion questions. Then there's an active learning section within the workshop. Then there's a reflection. And then there's suggestions for additional readings and ways to then apply the lessons that emerged out of the conversation in the workshop. Right, and all the additional readings are linked here. Okay, another version of this is our putting New York City to work using place-based assignments in your courses. Again, description, the materials, the plan for the workshop, an activity, discussion, and wrap up. Now, the audience for this workshop, and I'll stop my share now if I can. Oops, not CUNY first. Seem to be missing the stop share button. Auto share, there it is. Okay, so the audience for those materials are other faculty developers, right? We want people to be able to take workshops and adapt them to their environments. So what we're doing is providing them with a model of how we approach it, right? That's annotated in some way. Here's why we make the choices that we make, right? Here's all the materials that we use. This is enough for you to then develop your own workshop, or it should build, help you get part of the way there, right? But we want to acknowledge that like that translation still has to happen. There still has to be a layer of adaptation to a new environment. And this is something we're thinking about now as we're preparing to collect sample assignments from Graduate Center students. We're going to be launching an assignment repository in the spring, and we're thinking about what kind of taxonomy is necessary there so that we can get a large amount of assignments. We can do some quality control and annotation and introduction right? So people can more easily find things that are relevant to them. And then how do we make it so that that's legible and easy to circulate within the community so that we are able to foster more dialogue around teaching and learning. I'll put all these in the link, and then we can talk about them more, or in the chat, we can talk about them more in the Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Luke. I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff and Julie, and thanks to everyone for coming. I really appreciate the opportunity to go after Jeff and Luke, who have described the overall situation so well. And I think really digging into questions about how it is that we share the materials we create while teaching, the how and the why. And I think Luke's reminders of both the opportunities for sharing, which are significant, but also the dangers, the sort of the lack of context and the need to kind of show care in how we share what we share is important. So I am like Luke, I do, and like Jeff, I do believe that it's important to share the work we do in the classroom as a way of helping others build on what we do. And I do think those conversations are useful and important. So what I'm going to talk about today are just a couple of different ways in which I've done that, in which I've seen other people do that. The first thing that I'm going to do is to share a journal that publication that I took part in. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this journal called Syllabus. Are you all seeing that on your screen? So this is a small open access journal. Some colleagues and I, Rebecca Frost Davis, Catherine Harris, and I edited a special issue of this journal that it came out of a set of MLA presentations where we were doing the syllabus as. So we were inviting people to think about how does the syllabus look in different contexts. And you could see that we had people write what we called micro essays, which were super short, like I can't remember the word length, but it was something like 750 words, very, very short takes, kind of manifesto-like takes on the syllabus. And what I thought was interesting about this is just thinking about, I think there's a shift that we can consider making in how we think about our teaching. Part of it is, the teaching as scholarship, sharing our teaching in the same way that we share our scholarship. And also thinking about how the syllabus, thinking about the objects and the artifacts of teaching as discrete objects that act in different ways and that have different purposes. So what was kind of cool about this issue, I thought, was that we had people take the syllabus, the object of the syllabus, and sort of think about how it acts in different ways. And these are, again, manifestos or sort of highly opinionated takes on all of this. But, some of the pieces here, I would say, reflect points that have already been made. So for instance, Brian Croxall's article here, "A Syllabus is a Chance to Show Your Sources," really reinforces Jeff's points about how thinking about your teaching materials as scholarship enables you to think about citation and scholarship. It enables you to think about licensing and your teaching. So for instance, if you are choosing to share your materials openly and sharing it with a particular license, for instance, a Creative Commons share-alike license or attribution share-alike license, that means that people can use and remix your materials, but they have to acknowledge where those materials came from, and they have to share them openly too. So, what that does is it creates that very chain that Jeff was kind of talking about in GitHub that sometimes can be accomplished through a technical platform like GitHub, but can also be accomplished through a simple chain of citation. When you use and adapt an assignment that someone else has created, sort of noting in a footnote on your syllabus, this assignment was, adapted from XYZ. And I've really started to do that. And I think it's an important method to both acknowledge this sort of open space of sharing, but also to create a kind of chain of citation. But you'll also see in this journal issue, there are many different takes on the syllabus and how it acts, including the syllabus as like a terms of service. There's a piece on the syllabus that's handwork. So what does the syllabus look like when it's like hand designed and hand drawn, which I will fully admit I would not be able to do, but it's cool if you have any artistic capability. Now, both Jeff and Luke mentioned kind of this idea of repositories, and I wanted to point out that one way of thinking about your teaching materials as scholarship and as sharing is to deposit them in a repository. CUNY has its own institutional repository, CUNY Academic Works. And if you can see over here, this is what I'm showing you is kind of a search through CUNY Academic Works for syllabi. So, we're looking already at like more than 300 examples just since 2018 of syllabi that have been deposited in CUNY Academic Works. When something is deposited in CUNY Academic Works, it is kind of made part of the institutional record. It's something that people can cite and can view otherwise. And I guess there are 501 total syllabi submitted. So that kind of is cool within CUNY. That is at the institutional level. That is one way to share your syllabi. You can also think about sharing your syllabi and your other teaching materials in a more field or discipline space or repository. The Humanities Commons, which I do want to note it began as the MLA Commons. It's now sort of grown larger than just the MLA. It encompasses multiple scholarly societies, and it's built on the Commons in a Box, which comes right out of our own CUNY system and the CUNY Academic Commons. They have added a repository to their Commons installation, and they have many syllabi that people have uploaded. So it's kind of interesting to look through. You could think about, well, the CUNY repository is great, and I fully encourage everyone to submit to it, but I also encourage people to check out kind of discipline-based repositories. Certainly there are a lot in the sciences and also now in the humanities, thanks to Humanities Commons. So these are spaces where you can go, you can find materials, you can adopt them, and you can share your own. I do want to show the CUNY Academic Commons course directory, because in addition to thinking about sharing something like a syllabi, you can also teach openly. And Jeff has mentioned that he's talked about that a fair amount before, so I won't belabor it, but I'll just say that in addition to sharing the materials you create, you can also encourage your students to join you in a kind of open exploration and kind of teaching openly as well. But the project I wanted to just kind of close on and spend the most time talking about here is this project called Digital Pedagogy in the Humanities: Concepts, Models, and Experiments. My co-editors are Rebecca Frost Davis, Catherine Harris, and Gentry Sayers. And this was a project that was about a decade in the making. It was published by the Modern Language Association. I mean, we tend to think of it as basically an edited collection or book, but it began with this idea that when people think about sharing this or think about the scholarship of teaching and learning, it is often in kind of the second or third hand. It's often a faculty member's kind of like account of a class that happened. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide more directly the stuff of teaching, the syllabi, the assignments, all sorts of things. So what we did is we created over 50 keywords of digital pedagogy, and we asked people to work as curators and collect 10 or so examples of artifacts in that area, and to create a sort of a piece about them. So I'll show you one. This is collaboration, which came out of, these are former members of the CUNY community. And for each artifact, so this one is collaboration, we have the curator's names, then we have that that context, some of the context that Jeff was talking about, where this is the curatorial statement is sort of a description of what the curators were looking for. And then there are the examples of what they chose. And for each one, the artifact is it is tagged. There's a description, a sort of analytical description of it. And it's sort of noted, is it an assignment? Is it a syllabus? Is it a collaborative project? And across all of these keywords, 50 keywords, you can sort of like look in and you could see different, over 500 examples of particular artifacts and assignments. And actually, if you click into one of these and you click on, say assignment, you could see a full list of all the assignments across the entire repository, and you could also filter by tag. So there's a sort of like tagging mechanism, and if you wanted to only see assignments that are related to social justice, you could look at it like that. Or if you only wanted to see ones that involve student mapping, you could look at it like that. So anyway, this is I'll share links to this in the chat afterwards. But I think the larger points, from Luke's presentation, which showcased a couple of tools that have been created since the digital pedagogy and the humanities project was launched. And with that, and with the repositories, I think I just want to kind of reemphasize the value of sharing, of thinking about what it is you have to share, because it can be a syllabus, it can be an assignment, it can be the result of a class, but that we also have to think about issues that Luke mentioned of context, also of licensing, and sort of like what are the mechanisms in which we are sharing, and how can we best, as a kind of community of teachers and practitioners, create spaces where intellectual material and property is kind of respected, but also where those materials are shared in a way that enables more discovery and more experimentation in the classroom.
Fantastic. Yay. Great. I think we can open up the floor for a question and answer, either via the chat or just out loud. And everyone should note that there are lots of resources that all three of us have popped in the chat, just to make the convenient access.